So, how many of us are students in this room? Raise your hand. Okay. That was a test. Every hand should go up. I used to think that you had to be attending a school to be a student, but everyone in here, we are lifelong students. So thank you for sitting through this. I do know that when I was an actual student that I skipped half of my classes senior year. So thank you guys, seniors, for showing up. It means a lot to me. I was at an event at Northview Church, which is a church that about 2,500 people can sit in one service, and it was called Life Surge. And it was for entrepreneurs, and I was sitting there thinking, I was looking around, and I was sitting next to my dad, watching, and he's nodding, and I'm looking around, and I'm thinking to myself, how many of the people in here are taking notes, they're engaged, they're nodding, they're excited, and yet, when they leave here, they're not going to do any of this stuff. I mean, think about it. Why would speakers give away their secrets? Because they know no one's going to do it, or very few people are going to do it. And so I was sitting there thinking, how many people will actually implement this? And conversely, can I be the person that sits here and takes notes so seriously that I'm the person that's on stage giving this message next year? And so I want to challenge you guys, if you do take notes, if you want to write anything down, this is where I would start. The first one is, do I know what this speaker is saying? And what's cool about these principles is, regardless of if it's me that you're listening to, or any speaker from here on out the rest of the semester, or think about this, if you're going to be sitting in a room and you've committed at least the next 30 minutes, you might as well get something out of it. And so ask yourself these three questions. I do this every single time that I'm sitting in a crowd. I ask myself, am I doing this thing? That's the first question I write down. And it applies to everything I'm about to say. Am I doing this thing? 2, am I doing this thing well? Because I'll tell you, after 10 years of going to thousands of sales seminars, and I mean thousands, I have heard the same stuff over and over and over again. Just like I'm sure you have with some of your classes. I see some nodding. The third thing is, do I know this so well that I can give this message? Am I taking notes so well in this message that I can get up and take over where Remington left off? I want to start by telling a story. I grew up in Muncie. You guys know where Jackson and Tillotson intersect? You know that speedway? That's where I got my Slurpees. You guys know those lines? So that used to not be closed off. Main Street was open. You guys might be too young to remember that, but there's a house right behind Speedway that has 2 lions guarding it. Anyone know what I'm talking about? I think so. That was my uncle's house. I used to live 2 doors down from there. More to come on that later. When I grew up, we didn't have baseball. We had the Indians close by, but my grandpa was a huge Reds fan. And so one of my fondest memories, my dad, my uncle, my grandpa, and me, we would go to Reds ball games, which takes about 2 hours, hour and a half from here maybe. And we had a tradition because Skyline Chili wasn't in Indiana yet. So the tradition was you stop at Skyline Chili, right? You get a mound of cheese on these chili dogs, you eat it, and then you race, and it's like a game. You try to see if you can make it to the stadium without stopping in the bathroom first, right? Because it's Skyline Chili. I got more laughs at the last session. Put that down. So then we go in, and what's funny is my uncle's sitting in the front row. And one game, we were late. And so my grandpa, he turns over to my uncle and he says, hey, I don't think we're going to have enough time to stop and get that chili dog. We're going to miss the first inning. And I kid you not, I'll never forget what my uncle said. He goes, we can miss that first inning. I'm not missing my chili dog. So we get to the game, and I want to tell you this story about this baseball. I was at this game when I was probably 10 years old, and a fly ball comes a seat away from me, and the guy that caught it tossed it to me and said, here you go, kid. The guy who hit that foul ball, his name was Benito Santiago. Anyone ever heard of Benito Santiago? 2 people, diehard Reds fans. Most people have not heard of Benito Santiago. However, that ball in that moment was so monumental to me that I've never forgotten that name. And I want to talk about that. Think about this for a second. You have 2 baseballs sitting on an assembly line, and in that moment, a quick Google search will tell you it takes about 50 cents to produce those 2 balls. So, right there, those balls are worth the exact same amount of money, 50 cents. Within a day, within an hour, within a minute, they can be worth vastly different things. How many of you guys remember this? Maybe you don't remember this, but you've read about this. The 98 home run race. How many of you guys weren't born yet? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. How many of you guys have heard of Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire at least? All right. That's because it's such a famous race. A buddy of mine had season tickets to St. Louis the year that Mark McGwire hit that 63rd home run to break the record. The club offered him $500,000 in that moment to give that ball back. Now think about this. Why didn't the Reds offer me $500,000 for that foul ball? It's all about the story. The story is what makes it go higher. And I know this because the second he hit a 64th home run, it devalued that 63rd ball half. As soon as Mark McGwire hit another home run, that ball was now worth $250, and he ended up selling it for $125,000. Now, that's not chump change, but it's all about the story. And so when we talk about marketing today, I'm going to be talking a lot about the story. I think there was a couple breakouts that were about storytelling. Anyone attend those? Who went to the podcast breakout? That was pretty cool, right? That's my brother-in-law. More about him later. But I do want to tell my story because it intersects with Brett. So we both got our start in Cutco knives. There's like one person in here that's actually working for Cutco, or eventually, right? So Cutco, if you don't know it, is the knife company. And there was a stigma, and I wasn't very good when I got started. I wore a tie to all of my appointments, which got in the way because you're handling knives. That was a big mistake. I remember my first appointment. I was with my piano teacher at the church, and I was terrible. This is how bad I was. You're supposed to read it, right? Because you're brand new in sales. This is my first sales role. So you're supposed to read off the script. So the first thing I do is I'm trying to cut the penny. These scissors cut a penny. It's true. It's crazy. I think I got a picture of it. Yeah, that is real. And so I'm sitting there, and they show me how to do this, and they like say, okay, you got to push it on the table. So I'm at my first appointment. I'm like, see, it cuts a penny, and I'm doing this, and I almost break her table. And she finally just tells me to stop. And I'm like, no, seriously, it does. And she's like, I believe you. I will buy these scissors if you just stop. The second thing I do is I'm supposed to compare my sharpest knife in my bag, which is Cutco, to their sharpest knife. Now, 9 times out of 10, my knife is so much better. The 1 time out of 10 it's not is when she also owns a piece of Cutco. But the problem is I don't change up my speech because I'm reading, right? So she goes, okay, here, cut it with yours. 1. I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. So then I say, okay, now try mine. 1. See, isn't that better, Mrs. Jones? I did not veer off the script. That's how my first appointment went. Now, here's what's crazy about this. That was the first appointment. I did it terribly. And I sold $300. So now I'm on cloud 9. So I'm walking back to my house, and I'm still living at home. I'm 19 at the point, so this is the summer. I'm still living at my house. So I bust open the door, and I go, Mom and Dad, I'm the greatest salesman in the world. And I meant it, $300. I was basking in my glory. So then I had a second appointment, all right? Remember those lions, my uncle? That was my second appointment. So I take my bag, and I walk down to my uncle's house, same one that likes chili dogs more than baseball. And I do my appointment, and I got no sale. Oh, dagger. You're supposed to buy just because I'm family. Second thing, no recommendations. We don't even like you enough to send this to your friends. So I walk home, and I quit. I'm dead serious. That is a true story. I went from being the greatest salesman in the world to quitting. The emotions of this game are so strong. And I just want to let you guys know, especially the students sitting in the front row, you're about to embark. I imagine, even if you're not a true entrepreneur, but I think some of you guys probably have sights on entrepreneur. Just by show of hands, who wants to own their own business? Keep your hands up for a second. What do you want to own?
Like a thrift store with a workshop attached.
I love that. That's very specific.
Yeah.
A bar.
A bar?
Yeah.
Someone around here?
I don't know yet.
But you just know you want to own a business? Does anyone in your family own a business?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do they own?
My dad owns real estate, and then my grandpa does real estate, and then my other grandpa does HVAC, heating and cooling.
Nice. Great space. I want to talk to you afterwards. Who else?
Just a restaurant.
Restaurant?
Marketing consulting firm.
Beautiful. Now, have any of you guys taken a step towards doing that? Are you working in that field? So here's a quick tip, and then I'm going to jump into the title of this message. I know this is a very long intro. I think the most popular thing today amongst millennials and anyone under millennials, and this is why they make fun of millennials for living in their parents' basement, Gen Z, Gen Y, all of them, is because it's been told to us that it's no longer cool to work for someone else, that if you're truly a business owner, you need to own it for yourself. And that's why we continue to be getting out of college, getting out of high school, and living in our parents' basement, clicking on YouTube links, thinking we're going to be a YouTube star. I think a better route is to get into the industry that you're looking at. Real estate and HVAC are the same industry. So you get into real estate, and maybe you don't want to tune up HVAC units, but you learn, you get a job that doesn't suck within that industry, and you learn it, and then you start that side hustle. Side hustle and side income, all of that, it's a little faux pas sometimes because it distracts from the first thing unless you don't let it and you commit to that brand. If you become one with your brand, I will tell you that it was kind of embarrassing being the Cutco kid for a little bit until I showed everybody my first paycheck and my second paycheck and paying off school. Then it was actually pretty cool. And so I embraced my brand so hard that if someone was putting a billboard up of Cutco, I loved it, even if I wasn't the person in there, because the second they saw Cutco, they thought of Remington. That's how hard I hustled. So my first tip to you guys is if you're getting into this entrepreneurial pursuit, pick an industry, get into that job. It's okay. Be loyal, work for that brand, start the side hustle, and when that side hustle gets big enough, it'll become your main hustle. And that's what I did. So Cutco was my main gig. You can see there's Brett. Man, baby faces. That's great. We sold Cutco, and so I started, here's a little bit more about my journey. I got into Cutco closing gifts. So that was real estate. I didn't know anything about real estate. You know more about real estate right now than I did. But I knew that realtors liked giving Cutco as closing gifts. And so that was exciting for me. I got into that. And as I was attending to these real estate events, they were terrible. I'm talking like we would get to these events and I would set up a booth like this for $1,000. Okay, so already I'm into it for $1,000. They would give you these little pieces of paper that if a realtor came up to your booth, you're supposed to stamp it or like put a sticker on it saying, hey, that person came up, and at the end they get like, I don't know, a free gift basket, Chick-fil-A, something. And then they would go in for 3 hours to continuing education courses, and I'd be sitting there staring at all these other vendors. And I just paid $1,000, and the person that I'm trying to sell to isn't even in the same room as me. So I got pretty frustrated, and even amidst all of these events that I was doing, I was able to break the rookie record for Cutco because of all the other things that I was doing to get to these realtors. And so realtors became my business. And so when I started oh, by the way, there's Brett. We both had a baby within 5 days of each other. We do everything together. That's Charlie, that's Willow. He has 5 kids now, and they're all girls. Should we stop and pray real quick?
Oh my God.
So I've got 3 girls as well, but I got a boy on the way. So that's where RP comes in. Austin was talking about starting Real Producers. Real Producers came as a need because I wanted to sell more knives. So this is what I mean by the side hustle. My main gig was selling knives, and I knew I could do that, and I knew I could put food on the table, I knew I could pay my bills with knives. But what I was paying attention to, because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I wanted to own my own business, I wanted to start my own brand, was if I can get realtors to show up to an event and take out all the stuff I didn't like, and I started hosting these social events. And the first one was awesome. It was called Turkey Time. We gave away a turkey every 15 minutes. It made no sense, but they loved it. And they showed up and they bought more knives. I was like, oh, I could do this. I could start an event. And then pretty soon I was like, what if we put a face to it? So I started this online newsletter that I was emailing, and it was terrible. And I approached a company. I was like, hey, I want to make this look awesome. I want to make this a magazine. And so Real Producers was born. That was back in 2015. And so I was one of one. And I started selling advertisement to be in this magazine. If you are in the magazine, you can also attend the events. And it's invite only, and it's the top realtors. Because I was going to these events, and I was showing up. I don't know if you guys know this, but I live in Indianapolis. There's 10,000 realtors in Indianapolis. That's a fact. 500 of them will do most of the business. In fact, half of the realtors will sell one or less homes. So as a vendor, that's pretty frustrating. I remember taking a vendor out and saying, hey, listen, I'd love to take you out to lunch, win your business. And at best, they would buy a couple knives from me. And these lunches were like $100 a piece, and I couldn't afford it, but I was trying to impress them. Only to find out that that realtor only sold one home the year before. And they're collecting a $100 plate because I'm trying to impress them. I didn't know you could lie on Facebook. Did you know you can lie on Facebook? They said we're the #1 realtor, and they lied to me on Facebook. Unbelievable. So I started Real Producers. That was back in 2015. And now we are in 130 markets and we're approaching 30 million. That could not have happened unless I addressed my biggest fear in the industry, which is ROI. So let's transition. How long was that? That was 20 minutes, Austin, if you're taking notes. That was a 20-minute intro. We're going to talk about ROI now. ROI, for those of you who don't know, return on investment, that is what most people, when most people see this, this is how they think of ROI. How much money can I give you, and how much money will you give me in return for me giving you this money? That's okay, but I will tell you that's one of the worst ways to think about branding and marketing, especially if you're talking about the storytelling aspect. I want you guys to do something next time you're messing around on Instagram. Go to Nike's page, go to Red Bull's page. I'll just start with those two because I know those for a fact because I watch those. The amount of time they actually talk about their own product is like 1% of the time. 99% of the time, they're building a story. They're building a brand. The people who drink Red Bull do this. They fly off mountains. They ride mountain bikes until their ankles break. They're daredevils, right? Instead of, hey, please drink more Red Bull. Please drink more Red Bull. And so the problem is I got into this industry and I was like, okay, return on investment. We haven't been around even 1 minute, so I can't tell you how much this is going to get you back. We don't know if anyone's going to read it because the magazine doesn't exist yet. I was taking a magazine from Kroger that had a dog on it. And I'm like, so this is what it's going to be. It's not going to have a dog on it. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be a realtor. And you painted that picture. And luckily, I got 15 people to say, hey, we like the vision of this. We're going to take a chance on you. Now, the cool thing is I was learning in that moment what ROI actually is. And for me, it wasn't return on investment. It wasn't this. And now 10 years later, we actually do have those stats. Hey, if you advertise with us, we know how many people read it. We know how many people attend the events. What they're going to ask me for is, hey, if I advertise for $500 a month in this ad, how many clients will I get by the end of the year? And that's the wrong question to be asking. And I'll give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about, but here's what I want you to write down. This is a better way to think of ROI. The first one is reach. How many eyeballs can I get in front of? That's the first thing that you should care about. How many eyeballs can I get in front of? And what platforms am I using? The second one is optimal. Are these the right eyeballs? So I told you, how many realtors are in Indy? 10,000. How many of them will sell one or less home? Half. So if I get a product that goes to all the realtors, and I'm a vendor who has to value my time, is that a good product for me? If I go to all the realtors, do I want all the realtors to see my ad? No. There's some realtors that I really don't want to see my ad because I don't want them calling. AJ's going through that right now. There's my videographer. Everyone say hi, AJ. Hi. We got that on film for you, buddy. AJ's building his business around realtors too. He's doing, and you guys got to check out my Instagram. AJ does a phenomenal job. There's these vertical videos. It's everything I'm talking about today and more. We don't want certain realtors calling us because they will waste our time. So now we have a product that sorts those out. So it's not just the right realtors, we're also keeping the wrong people from coming to you. So optimal. And then the third one is impact. I'll give you a very real example for like the Instagram thing. So we converted my Instagram about a year ago to be a holding grounds to position me as not just the RP guy, because that's how everyone knew me, is like the guy who started Real Producers, and that's cool. But now it's like, okay, can we position this account so that it's marketing guru? It's someone who knows what they're talking about, so that when you position that person, people are watching that content. Now it's like, oh, that guy knows what he's talking about. How can I be a part of more of what they're doing? Does he have a podcast? Can we be a part of the programs where they get us in front of realtors? That's the questions they start asking. And so I started posting these reels, and I thought they were really good. AJ thought they were really good. And at first, people weren't liking and commenting and sharing it. It was getting a lot of views though. And so I was confused. And I was at a master class, and I sat down afterwards with some younger entrepreneurs, and they said, hey man, I really loved your video on, and I can't remember what it was, but we'll just say Coke. I really loved your video and your analogy about Coca-Cola. And I was like, I was watching like a hawk. You ever get on Instagram and you post something and so you keep refreshing to see how many, yeah, I see some nods. It's mostly the girls though. You guys don't do that?
No.
Just wait until you convert your Instagram. So then you're like, only 3 likes this minute. It's slowing down. Should I boost it? And okay, 4 more likes, we're good. And that's what I was doing with these posts. And so I knew that nobody in my sphere had at least commented or liked this video. And yet he's saying like specific things that he could have only said if he watched this video. And that was a huge aha moment for me. People are watching, they're seeing it, and whether they engage or not, it is working. So don't be committed only for that one post. Everyone's trying to go viral, right? And trying to go viral will get you into trouble. Because the second you don't get the right results on something, you're going to bail and do something instead of being consistent. So top of mind awareness and how many eyeballs I can get in front of with these dollars is my number one gig. And so I have 3 analogies, 3 different stories that I want to tell you that I think will help you guys with this. The first one is Coke. When I was in college, I drank way too much Coca-Cola, more than I'd like to admit. And then I hit 25 and I'm like, my body said, you're not allowed to drink Coke anymore. All right, cool. But every once in a while, I really want a Coke, so I'll have one. And I wonder what goes into that decision for me to have a Coke that day. Because it wasn't just that day where I woke up and I'm like, broke me down, I want a Coke. No. Maybe it was I was driving into work and a billboard had a big old Coke on it. That's the first one. And so now I'm not even thinking about it, I didn't realize it, but Coke's on the brain. Then I walk into my office and there's this buzzing old Coke vending machine in the corner, screaming Remington's name very silently, you want a Coke? And then I turn my TV on, now a commercial hits, and it might not even be a commercial for Coke, but Coke's so good they get other people to put Cokes in their commercials. And now that's the 3rd hit. Then I go into the break room, someone else is drinking one, so I smell it, and I hear the tss. That's probably what got me, that sound right there. Finally, 6 or 7 hits just that day broke me down. Because of the compound effect, I now drink a Coke. And it's the same thing with your marketing. I want to show you how this works in real life. So if you're thinking about building a business, whether it's HVAC, right? Thrift shop, restaurant. I want you to learn from Jeep for a second. I bought a Jeep Wrangler. It's the most social car on the road. Everyone waves at you. I didn't know that was a thing until I bought one. People kept waving at me. I thought it had something on my face or my car. But they're waving at you, so there's a Jeep wave. How many own a Wrangler or have ever owned a Wrangler? So you know the Jeep wave. Are you the cool one that just does 2 fingers? Yeah, I knew it. I know, I saw you the other day. So when you buy a Jeep, everyone waves at you. And what's funny is like when I bought the Jeep, I didn't realize how many Jeeps are on the road. Until all of a sudden, like every other car is waving at me. And then I realized it doesn't matter if it's a Jeep or a Prius or a pickup truck. The second you buy a car, you start to see it everywhere. Now, did more people buy them after you? Are you a trendsetter? No, they were always there, but your mind wasn't trained to see it. And so here's what happens. Here's a very real example. Fairway Mortgage. I bought my first house with Fairway Mortgage. I didn't know the industry. I didn't know Fairway. I didn't know what mortgage was. I barely knew what a realtor was, and I barely knew how to unlock my house when I bought it. I was very young, and I had a panic. This is a true story. This is not in my notes, AJ, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I bought this house, and I had less than $5,000 in the bank when I was done, and I had a mortgage payment like the next month coming. And I sat there, and my wife wasn't, I can't remember where she was, but she wasn't there. I literally sat in this empty house in my bed and had a panic attack. I'm like, what did I just do? The next morning I got up and I was like, okay, I think I'm good, I got it. And I was golfing at Fairway Mortgage. Now here's the thing. I had never used Fairway before, but I'm golfing at Plum Creek to celebrate buying my new house. And Fairway is advertising on the golf carts. So I call my loan officer and I'm like, you're stalking me. I just closed with you for the first time, and now you're advertising my golf. What's it going to be next? And he goes, Remington, I've been advertising on those golf carts for 2 years. I had been golfing at this golf course for 2 years, driving around that golf cart with a sign that said Fairway on it, never once seen it, not once. But now my mind, because of Eric, was trained to see it. And so here's what happens. Who is buying a house in the next year? Perfect. Next 5 years. All right? Next 5 to 10 years, most of you guys are probably going to buy a house. It's a great investment. That's a different speech, different keynote. Next year, Austin. So, buying a house is a great investment. You don't need a house right now, but let's say you meet Eric, my guy from Fairway, at a house party. Hey, I'm Eric. I work at Fairway. That's it. Now we just hang out. It's a poker party. We play cards. We go home. Next month down the road, you become Facebook friends because one of your friends said, hey, there's Eric. You're like, I saw that guy at a party. Do you need to buy a house yet? Nope. Okay. So then you see Eric at an event, and he's wearing a Fairway mortgage. I was like, oh yeah, that guy does mortgages. Still don't need to buy a house. Then you see a Fairway, now you don't even see Eric, but you see a Fairway logo on a golf cart or a billboard. Who do I know? Eric. And this is going to happen 8 to 10 times before, when you need to buy that house in 5 years, you're like, I need a loan officer. Who do you automatically think of? And so becoming one with your brand, we'll just use the HVAC unit again. If you start ABC HVAC tomorrow and you start attending our events, this is why, so my strategy with the magazine is I'm going to create a magazine, I'm going to create events, and I'm going to bring it together with social media. So that's the package that I give these people. And so if I'm an HVAC guy, I have an ABC Mortgage or ABC HVAC on all my shirts. I start attending, just introducing myself. Do they need an HVAC unit right now? Probably not. But I'll tell you, they flip those a lot faster than they flip houses. And so if I start attending all these things, and then you pair that with attendance to events and social media, it's game over. Now, here's one word to the wise, because I deal with realtors. Realtors is an even longer game, because you're dealing with, like, if you were trying to be a realtor right now, it's even tougher than life insurance, man. Like, all your friends are younger than you or your age, and they're not buying houses yet. So imagine trying to make the most important decision of someone's life and try to sell that. That's what starting a real estate business is, okay? So word to the wise from a realtor who did about 10 to 12 million, so he made around $300,000 to $400,000 at the time that he told me this. He said, it took me 2 years to get a single listing in my own neighborhood. 2 years. After I got the first one, within 1 year, it was the majority of my business, and he did $12 million worth of business. Isn't that crazy? But it took him 2 years. So imagine if it was 1.5 years and you're just grinding. That's a long time. Think about your last year at school. It's been a long time. It might feel like it's flying, it probably is, but it's a long time. 2 years before you got a single listing. So here's my strategy with marketing. You got quality versus quantity, okay? Quality versus quantity. You need both. There's a story taught of the ceramics teacher. And he separated it into 2 groups to make pots, okay? In group A, he said, your role is simple. To get an A in this class this semester, you have to produce one single perfect pot. That's all you have to do. Group A. Group B, he said, you will be graded completely differently. You will be graded on how many pots you can produce. Produce as many pots as you can. The more, the better your grade. And so this was a test, and what ended up happening is the best pots actually came from Group B because of repetition. In fact, Group A had some members in it that were so paralyzed by the task, they couldn't even complete it because it had to be perfect. I'm just curious, when you hear what I just said, What does that tell you? Go ahead and raise your hand or shout it out. Like, what do you do with this information?
You get better at something after practicing a lot.
Yeah, that's the first thing. I mean, this is loaded. There's a lot to unpack here. You get better at something by practicing over and over again. I've heard the phrase, practice makes perfect. That's not true. It's actually perfect practice makes perfect. You can actually practice a lot and get worse.
I was just going to say, like, learn from your mistakes, basically.
Yeah, learn from your mistakes. So that group B, they probably made a lot of mistakes. They probably broke a lot of pots, but they weren't worried about having the perfect one, right? So group A over there is like every single pot has to be perfect. So I'm panic mode. I'm like making sure, and I'm not even good at it yet. I haven't even made a pot yet. So how do you apply this to your marketing? If we're only talking about social media in this moment, how do you apply this to your marketing with social media? What do you do with this information? Go ahead.
Start making content.
Yes. He said start making content. But I don't know how or what to talk about. What do I do?
Get reps in.
Get reps in. You work out? What's your name?
Corey.
Corey, you ever heard of Franco Columbo? You ever heard of Arnold Schwarzenegger? Franco was stronger than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories. You bodybuilder or just casually lift? All right. So Franco's a bodybuilder. This he probably weighs 350 pounds. He was Mr. Olympia, massive guy. And so he can curl 100, 120-pound dumbbells easy. But whenever he was in the gym, he would curl 50-pound dumbbells. And so this guy who's half his size and getting frustrated because he's been lifting for a couple months, he's watching Franco and he's not getting as big as Franco. He goes up to Franco and he's like, I don't get it. Why you're lifting 50-pound dumbbells? I can lift 50-pound dumbbells. Why am I not as big as you? And Franco's quote is amazing. He goes, you don't understand. My 50-pound dumbbell weighs way more than your 50-pound dumbbell. Now, when I first read that, I was like, that's a head scratcher. I'm doing the math, 50, 50, carry the one. No, it's the same weight. I don't understand what he's talking about. What Franco is talking about, he's tapping in to a buzzword in your world, which is time under tension. And the concept is when you're lifting, the longer you can make a lift happen, the more you can squeeze, the more results you will get. When people get into working out and exercising, especially for CrossFit, I got into CrossFit. How many of you guys have done CrossFit? Yeah, so I got into CrossFit and I got injured like everyone else, so I quit. But when I was doing it, I realized, okay, so what's happening here is people get so obsessed with how much they're lifting because they think it's the number that's going to make them stronger, right? And I'm sure we've all been somewhat hurt, injured, felt bad after a workout if we did it poorly. And so this is what I apply to marketing, is like in these moments, if you are doing it just to do it, now here's a balance too, because we're talking about quality and quantity. If you're doing it just to do it, it can actually hurt you more than help you. You can get out content that is not well thought, it's not well put together, you're not taking it very seriously, you were just told, get your repetitions in, and so you're just getting it out there. Well, if you do that, much like someone who's just lifting the weight to say they did 50 pounds, well now you're throwing it up there and you throw your back out and you ruin the game, right? And that's what's happening with some of our marketing. So there's a balance. There's a balance between making sure you're getting in the game, getting pots, getting repetitions, but getting better as well, right? Because if you don't get better at your marketing, if you're not watching the people, if you're not sitting front row, and I love the front row people. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Brett Wiggins was sitting in the very first breakout for AI. He's a presenter here. He's not here to learn, he's here to present. But he was sitting front row asking questions because he's a lifelong learner, like what we talked about at the beginning. And I have plenty of friends who've made it in business, and I have plenty of friends who have failed in business. And what I have found, and I've only been doing this for 15 years, 17 years, goodness. What I have found is the biggest difference is with the businessmen and women who feel like they have arrived, that they don't need to keep learning, that they're out here answering everybody's questions. Like they want to raise their hand because the speaker doesn't know it. I know what he's talking. They're the ones that fail. And the ones who are constant students And if you're looking at how to apply this to marketing, the best tip I can give you is follow everyone who's doing what you want to be doing. Follow them and steal from the best and get better. Because if you do it poorly, you can actually be hurting your business. So here's a couple things that I'll wrap up with, and then I'll tell you about the Bear Dune. Everyone loves the Bear Dune story, AJ. Can I capture the attention of the top realtors? What is my plan when I get their eyeballs? So how does that apply to you? I mean, if you're not looking for realtors, my guy, what's your name? HVAC guy? Isaac? So Isaac, you should write this down directly because this is going to be your world. But if it's not your world, if you're a thrift shop owner, if you're a coffee shopper, you got to say, how can I capture the eyes of the people that I'm trying to get in front of? And what is my plan once I get them? How am I going to retain them? What is my content going to be to continue getting them excited about what I'm doing? One last thing, and then I'll wrap up. A company came up to me, OxyFresh in Indy, and they said, hey, I already have an advertise. Someone's already advertising in here, and I feel like I'm just reaping the benefits. So why would I advertise again? And my thinking is this. If you're throwing up a billboard in Muncie because your shop's in Muncie, I'll tell you, my grandpa and my uncle, who are here today, by the way, let's give it up for them. They're sitting there right here in the middle. Thank you, guys. They own a kitchen company, okay? Luxury Kitchens, Richard's Kitchen in the Bath Center. If they throw up a billboard in Lexington, Kentucky, do you think that's a good use of their ad dollars? Why? By the way, they're based here in Muncie. That should have been a given, but should they throw up a billboard in Lexington? Why should they not? I know you guys know the answer to this. Okay, so their target audience is here. Now let's say they found out that one direction of the highway, the billboard was phenomenal. And they also had a billboard in Lexington. And now they realize, oh shoot, the Lexington was not such a great idea. For some reason we're not converting. Let's take that money and put it somewhere else. Why would you not want to put it on the other side of that highway? So now everyone going to and from, or you're doubling down on that. Instead of saving money, let's go in twice. And so when the OxyFresh people came to me, I said, listen, when I was in Cutco, I wish 14 other Cutco reps were advertising in this because I want them to see the word Cutco because I embrace my brand. They're not just seeing Cutco, they're thinking Remington, 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 Remington. I don't care who's on the ad. I hustled. I'm working with this brand. And so I'll finish up with this and then we'll have a couple questions if you guys want. My family's very close. I've given you already a handful of stories about them already. My mom's side is called the Rawson clan, the Rawsons, and we have grown from 2 Rawsons, the patriarch, matriarch, to now 30 some. And we would take a trip every single year. We're going on 40 years of taking a trip. It's one of the coolest traditions. One year we went up to Michigan to the Bear Dune. Anyone ever been up to the Bear Dune? Nice. Did you fall? Okay. So the Bear Dune, picture this. 450-foot drop to Lake Michigan. This is so steep, I kid you not. You could stand and you jump out a couple feet and you go down 10 to 15 feet. That's how steep this thing is. And so people fly down this thing. They want to tackle it. They want to see how fast they can go. So when I was your age, my cousin was a little bit older. We flew down this thing, 450 feet, matter of seconds. And then it took us 10 to 15 minutes to get up. Seconds to get down, 10 to 15 minutes to get up, okay? And not one part of my mind thought that my very out of shape, overweight parents were gonna try to tackle this dune. But as we're coming up, we're climbing. And what's funny is when I was running down the first time, like you're flying, you're screaming, and you kind of look, you glance to the side where people are coming back up, and they look like they're dying. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on there, but this is really fun. So I get all the way down the bottom, and then I look up, and on both sides, people are climbing, and every time they take a step, they slide down. So they take up 2 steps, slide down 1. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not gonna be fun. Sure enough, we get going, 10, 15 minutes, we get up. If you can't make it, it costs $3,000 to rescue you. So that's the sign on the other side. So like even me, 18, 19, 20, I'm thinking, risk benefits here. We're going to do it anyway. I was in college. You get it. So I'm thinking there's no way. My dad was 50, 60 pounds overweight. Well, I look, my aunt and uncle, my mom and dad are flying down this thing. My dad gets going and he gets so top heavy that he just mows the sand with his mouth. Like his legs are over here. He's mowing it. I'm crying, laughing. And then they make it down to the bottom. Now here's where the story gets interesting. They start coming back up, and 3 of the parents make it up, but my dad's nowhere to be found. And I'm like, what's going on? Where's Dad? They're like, we're not sure he's going to make it. It's like, what do you mean he's not going to make it? He's going to die on this hill? They're like, no, but we think we're going to have to rescue him. And I'm thinking, I was the son of a preacher and a teacher. Do a little bit of math in your head, how much income we had coming in. We can't afford $3,000. This is a problem. So I take goggles. My mom and I would take goggles and water down to him. This is 45 minutes in. 45 minutes. That's about how long this message has been. I know it's grueling. And I say, Dad, what's going on? And we talk to him, we give him water, and we're like, you can do this. You can do this. And slowly but surely, he gets up that hill. And I asked him afterwards, and what's funny is like his heart was working so hard. He should not have gone down that hill. But his heart was pounding so hard that when he got up the hill, something crazy happened. He felt great. Like his heart went into overdrive. And so we were playing wiffle ball. He's rounding the bases. We go to another dune, and he runs so fast, he pulls a hamstring. It was a really rough day for Dad. We got a picture. He literally pulled a hamstring. It was brutal. But I asked him afterwards, I was like, hey, what got you up that hill? And he said 2 things. One, it was a fear of embarrassment. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the difference between running towards pleasure or away from pain. But if the 2 are done simultaneously, you can do some pretty incredible things. And the second thing was because Mom and I brought him water and goggles. And so I just want to leave you with this. It's all fun and games on the way down, and then something happens. Like you guys are some of you are about to graduate. Some of you probably have a year or 2 left, but all of you have these big dreams. And you're about to pursue these dreams, whether it's in the workplace, your life. And when you jump in, it's super exciting. Even come to school, super exciting. I can't wait. This is going to be awesome. I got these big goals. Remington on stage, he said, if I do this, I'm going to make millions of dollars, right? And so you fly down that dune. And then you turn around, and you're like, wait a second, I gotta climb this thing too? The second half looks way harder than the first half. First half looked fun. I'm jumping into this thing. This is going to be great. It's going to be easy. And along the way, you kind of glance to your side, and you see people dying on the hill. Like, nah, I'm not going to go through that. And then you start up that hill. And you go through it, what every other entrepreneur does. And you think to yourself, can I do this? Was this smart to begin with? How many have seen the graph of a penny doubled for 30 days? You guys know what I'm talking about? I got it here for you. So they tell you, well, first, they tell you, hey, if you double a penny for 30 days, you get $5 million. And quick math in your head, you're like, there's no way. And then you start to do it, and it's true. 30 days. Day 1, you start with a penny. Day 2, 2 pennies, 4 pennies, 8 pennies. You get down to the bottom. Here's what's crazy. Day 15, you're still at $163. So you get halfway into this thing, and the math makes sense in your head, but you're like, what is happening? I'm halfway into this goal, and I'm nowhere near $5 million. And that's what's happening with your plan, your vision, your entrepreneurship, your business, your life. You have these plans to get to $5 million. Halfway through, you're nowhere close. So then you got a decision to make. Am I going to get bailed out? $3,000 seems like a lot, or I'm just going to go put one foot in front of the other. So then you start to climb up it, and you're like, oh, okay, starting to go a little well. But even halfway through, you're still at $83,000. You were told $5 million was waiting for you. And so here's my question for you. When you get up to day 24 or 25, where my dad was, and you're nowhere near $5 million, who are the people that are going to bring you goggles and water? Who are the people in your life that are going to challenge you? We've heard that if you spend time with 5 people, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You've heard that before. Have you heard it like this? If you spend time with 5 alcoholics, you're going to be the 6th. If you spend time with 5 Negative people, you'll be the 6. You spend time with 5 millionaires, you're going to be the 6. It's your choice. Who are you surrounding yourselves with? That's all I got. That's my story. Thank you. So we got time for questions. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes for questions. You got some?
I'm an entrepreneurship major here, and I'm graduating on May 4th. I was wondering, what are some like skills or like industries, good starter places as an entrepreneur?
It's a great question. Do you know who Alex Hormozy is?
I do.
Yeah, so I listened to his podcast, a great podcast called The Game. He talks about if you're going to start from scratch, you don't really have vision, but you feel like you want to use your business tools, that you got to get into the trades. And he's totally right. You got to get into something where, like HVAC, electrician, like some of those, like it is a dying art. So the hardest thing right now, which I'm sure for the small businesses in here, you guys are experiencing this, the blue collar workforce, we don't have kids going to trade schools. So there's a shortage of people actually using their hands. And so that will change. I think you're going to see in the next 10 years, more people going to trade schools. So is your business going to be ready in 10 years to get that influx of people? All the meanwhile, you're going to be getting better at this from a small business. So I would say anything that's a trade is what I would start with. Second thing I would say to that is passion. Whatever you have passion for, like same thing with investing. Like, do you know what you're talking about, or a little bit? Are you excited about it? Do you want to, when at night, when you're flipping through on social media, are you looking up this thing? That's a great place to start. Yeah, good question.
As just someone like in business or someone that's interested in entrepreneurship, how do you accept failure and like move forward from failure?
What's failure? What do you mean by failure?
Anything, maybe like not being fulfilled by a job or literally like failing a company that you own.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that. So I think a lot of people will look at how something ends and they'll define their entire time there as how it ended. So 50% of marriages end in divorce. Does that mean the entire 10-year marriage was a failure? That it was just a loss? Most businesses, jobs, end in either you leaving or getting fired. Does that mean your entire time? That's a very sad life you have, if that's the lens that you're looking through. So for me, I define my life by faith and faith alone. Like my identity is not in Real Producers, it's not on Instagram, it's not speaking, it's through my identification is through Christ. And so for me, like, I don't care if I fail. It's literally like, even if you say the universe, which I don't believe, it's still the same thing, because it's like the universe is shutting that door. I believe God is shutting that door. And so that's pretty easy. I guess I'll walk through this one, right? So for me, I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe failure is when you quit. And we see that. But as long as you're still going, I don't think you're failing. I'd be surprised that you have physically failed at anything yet, because you're still here.
What advice do you have for businesses looking to integrate storytelling into their marketing? You mentioned earlier how you had to position yourself in a certain angle starting a business. So how can businesses incorporate storytelling into their marketing campaigns that are really effective in engaging their audience?
Well, I think it's all about the people, right? So like, I'm writing a book. That's a nice say. Thank you. I'm writing a book right now. So it's basically how I built a business calling on realtors. And one of the chapters is making the client the star of your show. I had a phenomenal experience with the photographer at my wedding. This dude, so he charged me way too much, and I was happy to pay him. Like, he made me feel awesome, because every time I got on the phone with him, it was, I'm gonna make you guys look awesome. You guys are gonna love the results of this. It's going to be quick and he followed through. On the day of, which is like the craziest day when you're getting married, and I was paying for the whole thing, so I wanted to make sure everyone's having a good time. He's like on top of it. And I was thinking about that. I was like, he constantly made me the star of his show. It wasn't about him. And I think what businesses do is they make it about themselves. We are awesome at this. We can do this. When in reality, if you make it about the people within the workplace and the people you're impacting, then they're going to write the story for you, because they're going to tell you what their story is. They're going to share with you the story, be a part of the story. So I don't know if that's a very high level answer to that, But that's the way we look at it. Like if you look at real producers, we are literally physically I've never put myself on the cover of my own magazine. That'd be kind of weird. But I put a realtor on it, and we literally share their story. And guess what? Next month, even better. The best issue that we've ever come out with, next month. Next month is the best issue. When we get there, the best issue is the next month. So, anything else?
So I would say this is like a really good thing to know, especially with all them about to graduate, and I just actually graduated in December and stepped into a sales role in B2B. So like,
Yeah.
you being in the industry so young too, you know, what is your biggest piece of advice? I know like sometimes me, like walking into some of these businesses, we're like, oh God, who's this little blonde girl in
Yeah.
blue pants, you know? Like,
Yeah.
to have the confidence and, you know, what would be like one piece of advice
Yeah.
for that confidence?
So position yourself as a student and embrace it and own it and be totally okay with it. And don't act like you know. Like so the average realtor when I got into the industry was 55 years old. And I was 23 and hadn't bought a home yet. I was terrible at that too, man. I walked in and I said, hey, how many homes do you flip? Because I thought that's what they did, is flip homes. Turns out that's not what they do. They sell homes. I didn't know that. I was calling them realtors instead of realtors. Pissed them off completely. So I screwed up like in my first year, but you know what I did well? Is after I was done doing my sales pitch, I'd sit back down and I'd listen. And I learned so much in those first couple years. I started buying rentals because I was like, hey, this is what they're doing. Might as well practice what I preach. Got up to 5 rentals, 6 rentals now, right? So immerse yourself in it and be okay that you don't know everything. But instead of coming from a position of knowing, because you're going to talk to someone and they're already going to prejudge you because of your age, and that's okay. Instead of trying to challenge them, like maybe give them a couple pieces where like, oh, this chick knows what she's talking about. Be okay with turning on them and say, teach me. Tell me what I don't know. What would you do if you were me? How would you make this sale? Like really, in a sales presentation, be like, if you were me, how would you sell you? What's the worst that can happen? That's the best I got. I mean, that's what I did, and it worked out for me.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Austin. This is where you can find me. These were the reels that Austin was talking about.
Yeah, and definitely check him out on Instagram. Everyone, please give Remington a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.